Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Bass2Yang, and today I'd like to take a look and listen to the different qualities of a B1. Keep in mind that this is my voice, and so it'll feel differently and sound differently to you, and may even be different on the graph. But I like to just use this example and see what we've come up with. So what I have here is at the very beginning, the first few seconds is what I would call full voice. It feels connected and feels like my voice is, I'm not doing anything to change it other than just sing. The second one here feels more like a Strohbass, if you want to call that, a mixed fry, but a little bit more focused on the low end, similarly to pressing the notes at the end of my range with as much volume and brightness as I can without getting into too much tension. This one right here, this third one, this is what we would call chest voice dominant, if you want to, if there's a term for that, where it's all about the length of the vocal fold, and it's a little bit more breathy. It's very full and works really well for popular music or closely mic'd music. It doesn't quite travel too far, but we can take a listen to that. This fourth one here is what I would feel in my voice, what I would call vocal fry. And finally, this is just a clip of one of my videos where I sing a B1 using Subharmonics. So this one has a slightly different vowel. This here has a slightly different vowel, so I had to modify a little bit just to get some sound out. But let's take a listen to all five of these. So you notice each and every one has their own benefits, their own advantages and disadvantages. Obviously, we want to stay here in this region where it's nice and full, it's connected, and no modification besides vowel is needed. Here, this is more of like the low end, especially if I've been singing for a while and I start to lose my low end a little bit, I find myself doing this. And if I'm not careful, it does introduce some tension, but it introduces quite a bit of brightness as well. So it does balance a choir quite well, especially if I'm by myself. In terms of a solo, I probably would not be using this. Out here, this one right here, it's more of a close mic situation. So if I'm singing something and I just want it to be warm and full, but I don't want it to be dominating in the mix, in the audio mix, then this is what I would use. Synth bass or sine type bass, where it's just like feeling. It's all about feeling the bass as opposed to hearing it. It would be this one right here. I think I've had a couple of comments from people saying that this is sort of like the Avi Kaplan sound here. Not to say that I sound like him, but just that similar sound where it's about the length of the fold and about the warmth. Here, this is obviously vocal fry. Now, the cool thing about vocal fry is that it helps you find chord closure, and it helps you find the pitch. Obviously, if you don't regulate it, then it'll be all over the place. Vocal fry as a dysphonia tends to not have a pitch, but once you are able to cultivate that a little bit and bring a pitch to it, then you can start using it. I don't recommend trying to bring it into your range, but just find a note that's comfortable and sit on it and see where it takes you. And finally, our subharmonics here. It is what it is. It's the variance in terms of low end is quite. You can really tell. In a choir, it really projects and it stays above the choir, so you can really hear it. In terms of solo, it can be used as a solo. It's just you need to be very careful, and you need to know the risks of it. If it pops up the octave, if it sounds too bright, or if there's too much of a color change, especially if you're doing bel canto type things where it needs to be smooth and even and not a hugely drastic register change, you might want to avoid that. So let's take a look at the first one here, just visually. So this plot spectrum, in Audacity really kind of gives us an idea of what's going on here. So these clips are somewhat normalized, and they're not peak to peak. Like I didn't do anything to make them all similar. I probably should do that, but I just like to show you the differences within itself. right? So if let's say here, let's see here, this is a B1 at negative 23.2, and then the next one is 33. So notice how there's more of the fundamental, and then you have your overtone series, and there's a lot of energy here, and also a lot of energy here. So there's that pharyngeal resonance, between 200 and all the way up to 500 here. You have this next area here, which is usually, if I recall correctly, this is like that nasal resonance, that up there. And then your singer's formant, where your vocal folds come together to resonate. It's between 2K and 3K in this area. So there's a lot of energy. This looks pretty good. Once again, the fundamental is very strong here. Let's go to the next one. So here's R2 for about 2 to 3.5. You'll notice it's not quite as a difference, right? Don't pay attention to this side, but pay attention to the variance of the first fundamental and the second. Sorry, the fundamental and then the second harmonic. So you have a B1 at about 34, and the difference is about 10. And so there's a little bit more here. Notice how there's a lot of mid-range energy. Still have some connection, so my voice is still coming together. My vocal folds are still coming together, so there's that energy here. In terms of the pharyngeal resonance, it's a lot more less, almost as if like I've kind of closed up a little bit. And once again, this graph is only to represent the aftermath. Don't use this as a gauge to try to get somewhere, meaning like don't try to sing to the graph. Just sing what feels great and feels right and is healthy, and let the graph be an evaluation as opposed to prescription. All right, so let's go to the next one. So this one was full chest resonance, but everything else is muted. You could probably see it here. Notice how, see how this drops off. The 3K, 2 to 3K drops off quite a bit. A lot of fundamental and a lot of for the second overtone. So yeah, there's a lot of energy here. There's some energy here as well, but then see how it just drops off dramatically. And so that's that. What I'm physically doing, it feels like I have the right shape here, but everything else is muted, almost as if like I have a cover, as if I've covered my entire voice. And there is some laryngeal depression, so it does feel like it's moving down a little bit, and that's more, I don't know if that is a result of it, or if that's just me trying to get that sound. And so it could be that I'm just trying to get that sound, as opposed to having to lower the larynx to get this. So I don't recommend lowering the larynx. I do recommend keeping it free, and if that means that it's slightly lower, then it is. Once again, a lot of energy, fundamental, second and third. Very cool. Let's take a look at vocal fry now. So this one, if I recall, is quite interesting. Even the vocal fry, it's somewhat even, right? Between here and here. And then pharyngeal, there's some energy there. And then there's a lot, definitely way more in this area. And that's that rattly area in the voice, that vocal fry area. I tend to, whenever I use vocal fry, it tends to be quite dominant in this area. It's almost like it's like very nasally and thin. And then there's a huge drop off, and then finally the voice here. So the cool thing about vocal fry is that your voice is coming together, and so you do have that singer's formant, just not the lower partials, right? See how the 2K area is less, and all of a sudden the 3K area jumps up quite a bit. And so that's where you get all that brightness, that very rattly, that frying bacon sound, if you want to call it that. At least that's, to my knowledge, that's what it feels like and what it sounds like. And so it is what it is. But once again, there is a lot of fundamental here. And you'll notice that it's significantly less. So this is not as loud as the other forms of singing. However, it does sit in the front. So if you have like 5 or 6 singers that can fry the notes, that can use this sound, then you can actually give off a very, very convincing bass octavist sound in your choir. You do need a lot of baritones and a lot of tenors to warm up that sound. So it is a trade-off for that. And finally, let's take a look at subharmonic. So take a look at that variance right there. Right? The equal between the fifth, like the fundamental. This is actually the fundamental that I'm singing, which is a B2, and then the fifth. It's usually equal, which is interesting because of whatever math that happens, physics that happens in your voice. This interaction here gives us this note here, which is a variance, in this case, of almost 20 decibels. And with subharmonics, you're usually between 10 and 20 decibels of a variance. And that could be because of the way it interacts. It could be because of, our brain is actually creating that lower harmonic for us. So in this case, right, it's not like, if you want me to explain it a little bit clearly, it's kind of hard for me to do that, but all I can say is that it's not a true subharmonic, meaning that, because if it is, then this would be showing up about as high as here. But what it is it's just the formants being arranged in such a way that it's imitating that subharmonic, if that makes sense. And so there's a lot of work that's been done already scientifically. You can find them online. For me, I'm just talking about the feeling and what it looks like. So this is not a scientific basis by any means. It's really just a reflection of my voice and what I see and what I feel. You'll notice there's a huge pharyngeal warmth here, right? The spike in energy between that 200 to 500 hertz. So that's where that warmth and that almost distortion type feel comes from, right? It comes from this perfect fifth here, and then also these harmonics here. And then yes, there's a strong it doesn't feel like vocal fry because it's a lot less in this area, and then there's a spike in the 2K and then closer to the 3K area, and that's why it sounds like it's so strong, why it's out there. It's because of these harmonics that are showing through. So thank you for taking your time to listen to this. This is just me putting stuff together, no video edits. Obviously, this is just the way I work, and choose your weapon of choice, right? So these are all different types of B1s for different situations. Here, I would use this as the full voice in any situation when possible. This one, this is if I want to be a little bit brighter, or if I want a little more cut in my voice, and also if I'm not singing a solo. Here, if I'm providing backup and warmth, if I need more of that subterranean energy than the overtones. Typically, popular music, if I'm mic'd, this is what I would use. Here, I would use this more of like an exercise, just to help me find the pitch and find a little bit more connection in with my vocal folds, as opposed to just stretching the folds out. I need a little bit more of that slack feeling, that thickness, and so this would help me reestablish that. Subharmonics, you know me. I'm just using this as for training. I use it in performance. It can pretty much be used in any case. Here, as a solo, even though I've done solos with it, it is a higher risk to perform. So as long as you know those risks, if you're using it the entire time, or if you're using it for one or two notes, just be aware that it carries that risk. And unfortunately, because you are aware of that, it kind of puts a little bit more pressure on you. So rather than doing that, sometimes I just tell myself, oh yeah, I do have this note. I don't need to worry about it. And I just need to sing it straight through. So these different qualities, I'll give you another listen all the way through. Right, besides the slight difference of the vowel, my preference would be here and here. This for training and warm-up purposes. This for just synth and sign-based purposes. So once again, thank you for listening, and I hope you guys have a good day.